Hey everybody, Matthew Pillmore here. Just flew into Orlando, Florida, and I'm staying here at the gorgeous Omni Resort and Hotel in Orlando for the Money Show, a major event. 4,000 or 5,000 people are going to be coming by, checking out our classes tomorrow and Saturday. What are we here to talk about today? This is a really special treat, guys. I've got Aaron Young reaching out here in just a couple moments. He is the CEO of Laughlin Associates, a really close friend of mine, and he does a podcast known as the Unshackled Owner. Really helpful for entrepreneurs, business owners of any type who want to learn how to develop themselves both personally and professionally. Now, Aaron is a really tremendously admirable person. He's somebody that I've learned a great deal from over the last few years. So I'm really honored to be on his podcast and sharing how we did what we have in order to get here today. And how do we teach other people to do the same thing? I'm going to share some of the resources that I've tapped into and want to make sure that you're a part of that. So make sure you stay tuned for today's segment. Thanks for joining.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Unshackled Owner Podcast. I'm Aaron Young, and this is episode number 14 of the podcast where we're showing you how to build a business that works harder for you than you have to work for it. A business that's not just a glorified job, it's a real asset, something that you can sell, something you can leverage, something you can really get real value out of, and one that you can own without it owning you. The whole idea behind the Unshackled Owner, the concept is you can run a business, but then you can also have a life. And this is what I found as I've talked to so many business owners over the years as I've built companies. Too many business owners are owned by their business. And so this is the place we're talking to successful, smart, awesome people, hearing what they're doing in their business to be less and less shackled and how they're figuring out how they can make real wealth without just being the most critical employee in their business. Anyway, we got a great guest today, a good friend of mine. His name is Matthew Pillmore. He's the founder of VIP Financial Education. This is their 17th year in business, and that sets them apart from the crowd right there. And not only are they 17 years old, but we're going to hear more about Matt's story as we get into this. But I'll just tell you, this is a guy who came in and saw opportunity and took advantage of opportunity. And it's ended up becoming a great thing, not only for him, but for tons and tons, thousands of clients. So anyway, Matt, welcome to the podcast. I'm so glad to have you here.
Aaron, always a pleasure. Nice speaking with you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great. Okay, what I'd love to do, and I'm just going to let you kind of opine here for a minute. I'd love it if you would just tell us, like, how did you get started? I know you were young. You're a pretty young guy now, and you've been in business 17 years. So tell us how that started and just kind of how you went from the beginning of VIP to being the master and commander of that ship.
Okay, well, I'll try and give you the fast track life story. You know, I've really been an entrepreneur my whole life. I can remember back when I was 9 years old selling cold soda on the golf course in my town, in my local town in Colorado, and I would make hundreds of dollars a month. You know, we'd set up really strategically on a public course where there was no golf, where there was no drink caddy, and we would sit on the seventh hole where people were just parched. So, you know, it worked out really well. And from that point on, I was hooked on being my own boss.
Is this a disruptive thing? Like, did you have permission to be there? Or did you like carry a cooler on there with little kids walking up there with a cooler and saying, you know, kind of like setting up a lemonade stand on the seventh hole? I mean, how did that work?
Yeah, I don't think we were really allowed to be there, although we didn't really sit on the course. We were sitting on the shoulder of the road, so they couldn't do much about it. And we were out there all summer. It was myself and my brothers, and we made a fortune. We started this company called JAMS. It was an acronym for John, Adam, and Matt's, our three names. And, you know, our parents were in full support. We would set aside the money. It would go into an envelope, and we would use that money every year to afford various weekend getaways and trips with the family, things that we wanted to purchase as kids. It was awesome being able to control basically our own destiny when it came to finances. Even at that age, it was something that we could definitely appreciate.
Wow, it's a great story.
Yeah, don't call Sunset Golf Course. You know, they might.
It's a disruptive marketer right there. No, we're not quite on the course, but
right.
But if you wonder why your beer sales are down, it's because these cute little kids are sitting here selling Diet Coke.
That's true. It worked, and I was the cutest, of course, and you know, obviously, it never hurt to have those good looks as a kid. We sold a lot of soda. You know, it's funny because then as I started getting older, I did the full routine. At 13, I had a paper route, very much my own boss doing that too, but gradually kind of becoming more of a W-2 wage earner. I got a traditional job in the mall at 16 in a Chinese restaurant. And from there, it was everything from pizza delivery to warehouses to retail work. And I just couldn't stay with a job, and I just struggled working for other people. One thing I was always really great at was solving problems. And that translated into a knack for sales. And if I could find things that I really believed in, whether it be Cutco knives or selling shoes, I was really good at it. And eventually that led to a role in the promotions department with ADT Security Systems. And I worked my way up quickly there to where at the age of 20, while still attending school, I was earning $100,000 a year. But it was also a canvassing position. And if you've ever knocked door to door, that is some tough work.
Will wear you down.
Yeah, it does. It wears you down.
You know how many people I've met that are successful entrepreneurs that did some kind of a hardcore door knocking commission sales deal? It's like the hardest front lines of business, but there's something about that crucible that really brings out that entrepreneurial spirit. And people that have a silver spoon and are easy path and fall right into that W-2 job, they'll never understand it. And people that think entrepreneurism is easy, you're wrong, because most of the men and women that are successful started off in the hardest grunt work. And I'll tell you, knocking doors is tough. But if you're good at it, you can make a boatload of money. So I cut you off, but I want to point that out. A lot of our guests have done door-to-door work, and it's amazing that that's like this repeated theme in really successful business owners. But anyway, go ahead, Matt. So you're doing that, and you're getting burned out.
I wouldn't trade it for the world. I honestly think it's one of the things that really can help groom you into a much thicker skin. You're contending with everything, all the elements, the weather. I started in September through the winter, and it was one of these really hardcore boiler room style door-to-door positions. We came into the office every morning at 7:30. We had a 2-hour meeting, and we would just get yelled and cussed at for 2 hours, Monday through Friday. And their motto was, your pat on your back is your paycheck, because we made a lot of money. At 20 years old, $100,000 feels like a fortune. It really does.
Almost everybody in the world would consider $100,000 a year a fortune. So at 20 years old, and we're going back 17, 18 years or whatever, Matt, that was a lot of money.
I know. I was cashing $2,000 paychecks. And because I was knocking door to door, I stumbled quite literally into the opportunity to start VIP. Ultimately, I was offered a position through somebody that I knocked on his door. I was out on a Sunday. And listen, if you can knock doors, you can do anything. And the mortgage industry happened to be scorching hot in 2000. And he said, look, you can come in and without knowing anything about it, make 60, 70,000. And I said, that's all right. I'm good. Well, a month later, I'd had enough. I was tired of getting yelled at. It just wasn't the morale building type of business model that I've tried to create. And I handed them back their shirts. And I went back to this guy. His name, ironically, was Larry King. I'll never forget that, obviously. And I said, Larry, are you still willing to train me? I was embarrassing as it is to think back now, I didn't even know what a mortgage was.
Well, you're 20 years old. You're not supposed to know.
That's true. I feel now that people should know. Unfortunately, our school system deprives us of that education. But you're right. We don't learn growing up what that is. Technically, we kind of have an idea. So I was trained from the ground up at 20. I accepted the role as one of the founders of America's Mortgage and came in doing wholesale residential mostly. It was obviously a cutthroat business at that point with everybody trying to make a fortune selling subprime lending. I never subscribed to that, and for that reason, really had to learn how to work hard early on. Now, in order to separate ourselves from our competition, we started VIP Financial Education as complementary curriculum of fairly traditional real estate related topics. And we would just teach in the general Denver metro area to what started out as small audiences. And then over time it grew. And we were actually quite surprised by the eventual popularity of this curriculum to where it inspired us. A year, 2001, 2002, year or two in, we said, man, it would really be a good idea to become the authority on a specific subject and just start to be known as the leading experts on that. And For us, we were really inspired by the mystery of credit. Credit was something that we knew was playing an enormous role in these loans that we were processing. But, we just never really saw anyone ripping back each layer of the algorithm to expose it publicly.
All right, so let's stop the narrative for 1 second. So tell us, what is it that you learned? What do most people think, and what did you learn? Kind of in a nutshell, like what's the bumper sticker here on what most of us think of as credit, but what you actually know as credit and what you were trying to expose?
Okay, so at that point in time, I sought out the leader in the industry, and his name is John Olsheimer. He's one of the original creators of the Fair Isaac credit scoring algorithm known as FICO, and this is the score all the banks use. And what surprised me most was through my lifetime, as an undereducated consumer, as we all are, I was taught by parents who, by all standards, would be considered living the American dream. My dad worked at home my whole life as a self-employed CPA. My mom worked 2 days a week as a travel agent. To get great credit, I was taught you had to pay your bills on time. That was it. Make sure you have some credit and then make sure it's paid as agreed. That's it. I never had any additional information regarding credit until coming in and learning that, wow, there's this underlying underwriting guideline that means everything. And it not only is affecting the ability to get new lending, but it's also affecting the cost every month to live, whether it be through interest rates or insurance premiums. Even if I never wanted to borrow another day in my life, my insurance is affected. My ability to rent places is affected. My ability to get a specific job is affected. So credit seemed really important, even in 2000, and it's only gotten more so. So what I've learned now is there's so much more beyond paying your bills on time. In fact, that's worth only 35% of your credit score. 65%, 2/3 of the score, is determined by 4 other ingredients that we never really hear much about. Over time, through just School of Hard Knock, we tend to pick up on some of these details, like how much we're using of what's available to us. But what most people fail to understand is just how much power and control they have through a very small amount of proaction each month on their not just credit scores, but overall credit profiles. And that's one thing we've gotten really good at.
Yeah, so go a little deeper there, because this is like you're dangling this wonderful treat in front of us. Okay, so we know pay your bills on time, right? You have to have some credit, pay your bills on time. It has something to do with what percentage of, so in other words, if I had 2 credit cards and one was maxed out and one was 0, that hurts my score rather than having both of them at like 40%, used. I'm using partial on 2. Isn't that correct? Like you should never be maxed out.
There's some juggling that you can do to manipulate the aggregated totals to kind of balance out those ratios and see some impact. True. I like other strategies a little bit better. Yeah, you're right. The debt to available ratio, not to be confused with debt to income, is a huge factor. It's worth 30% of the score, so almost as much as whether or not you pay your bills on time. And the truth is, every percentage point reduction to that ratio is an improvement or considered a positive impact to your credit scores and profile. Every percentage point increase to that ratio is considered negative to your credit profile.
Wait, what does that mean? What does that mean?
Everybody hears these various milestones being discussed, whether it's you got to keep your balances below 50% of your available or 30% or 10%. And while these benchmarks I think are useful to set target goals around, the truth is 18% is better than 20 and 15 is better than 18. And paying your balances on revolving credit cards every month in full is the objective that you need to be working toward. That is the most positive.
Pay it off every month.
Pay it off in full every month. Not only is that the most positively influential to the scores, but it obviously impacts your debt to income ratios more favorably, and you don't pay any interest on credit cards when you pay them in full every month, even if it's a 30% interest credit card. So we're using credit cards daily for everything that we've already planned on spending money for, but we just pay that balance in full before it's due every month. And we do that in order to collect the rewards.
Got it. Okay, well, that's interesting. All right, so you're learning all this stuff. You're a young kid, and you start to find out that a lot of people want to learn this stuff. And so how did you go from being kind of a way of augmenting your, I guess what it was is kind of differentiating yourself in the market by becoming more useful to your prospective borrowers? how did you go from that to kind of jumping it up to where you are now? And I need to know this, as you were going along that path, like, did you ever slam into a wall and go, oh, something has utterly changed and I have to figure out how to innovate around it?
Yes, absolutely. Without question, many walls. So what that initial introduction to some of these pioneers did for us was landed me the FICO certification, and I was actually the youngest certified FICO expert in the country at the age of 23. So by 25, I was seasoned at traveling and speaking, talking on various media outlets. I was doing dozens of guest radio appearances each month and a handful of television segments, just talking about credit. And along the way, just through that ambition and hustle, I stumbled into what we now are best known for, which is this cash flow optimization strategy. And it's kind of this collection of everything that we were getting well known for and becoming specialized in previous to learning this. And then it suddenly just wrapped all that up and packaged it into this amazing capability to almost rewrite the rules against the banks. And the very first time I heard that it was possible to utilize specialty credit in order to manipulate the way that we were borrowing and leveraging for business expansion or for real estate investing, I just shrugged it off. I can think back now, and my initial reaction to it was, I've been in the lending world now for half a dozen years. If this were real, I would have heard about it. So you ask about the speed bump or the walls. What really were the walls that slowed me down, tested me? There were a couple things. First of all, if I could go back and do anything over again, it would be learning to be more humble early, accepting that you don't know what you don't know.
Okay, so everybody listen to that. Listen to it, because I tell you what, that's what I would go back to. If you're successful at a young age, you sort of think that you've got this suit of armor on and nothing can hurt you, and that you got it going on. But that humility issue is the single biggest chink in your armor. If you're not humble, you're going to miss out on opportunities. And if you think by 25 or 30 or by 50 that you know it all, then you're going to limit your ability to really make true wealth, because it's always changing. It's always changing. So I wanted to just stop on that one for a minute and take it in, because we blow off things that we don't understand. We ignore them to our own detriment.
That's right. And it's embarrassing to think back on that today, because that level of arrogance, I know it cost me a fortune. I know for a fact it did. And I just struggled admitting that I needed help. I was always that natural DIYer. And it wasn't until 2009 when I finally had to admit to myself that I had made a $180,000 mistake. And there are a lot of people around me that make much bigger mistakes, and a lot of people that are shocked that I could make a mistake so large. But nonetheless, it was one that I could have avoided if I was willing to admit that other people know more than I do. And that, frankly, when I'm in the midst of some of the most important decisions professionally and personally, my emotions are going to get in the way. And I've learned over the years that emotional decision making is rarely the same thing as rational decision making, if ever. And so I've learned since that time to more often than not ask for help. I surround myself with people like you, as many great and successful people as I can, people who I admire, people who I look at and say, man, I just want to emulate that person. And I think that's what it's all about. I just don't think that there's not all that many new things being invented anymore. I think you just need to find the stuff that you can really stand behind, that really is a kind of a clear-cut perception of you, and just emulate and improve where you see there are weaknesses. And so you don't have to reinvent any wheels. It's just a matter of kind of improving and polishing the wheels that are out there. That's my opinion.
Okay, so Unshackled listeners, remember this. A lot of times the walls we slam into in our business are walls of our own making.
True.
And so often that is out of ignorance. And most of our ignorance comes out of a lack of humility. It's this feeling of we have to do it ourselves, we're the smartest person in the room, or we're embarrassed that we're going to get judged because we don't know something. And so instead of asking questions, instead of seeking help, mentorship, education of some sort, books, events, roundtables. I mean, whatever it is, go out there and always be exploring. I was just listening to Damon John today, and he was saying that it doesn't matter how successful he is, doesn't matter that he's had 8 seasons of Shark Tank. He said, the more I'm out there in the business world, the more I realize how much I don't know and how fast the industry or the world is iterating. And so I've got to be out there on the cutting edge of what's going on. So if you feel like you've got it all figured out, working from your kitchen table or working from, you got 10 employees and you're making money, I promise you, if you don't adapt to what's changing in the world and learn the best practices from the best people, you will eventually get left behind. That's where it's going. So we just heard that making a lot of times the wall that you slam into and then you go, how the heck did I slam into it, is a wall you built, custom made for you to crush your nose into. I have to ask you about one more thing, and then we're going to go back and talk about how you've built your business a little bit more with people and so on. But you sort of mentioned it, and I know from being a customer of yours that you have something you call debt weapons. And that's something I was completely unaware of until I heard you speak. So tell me about, just dangle it out there for everybody to know, what is a debt weapon and how do you use the bank's products against the bank?
Oh, that's a great question. So what we finally mathematically concluded was there were so many different better ways of borrowing than what we are often led to when we approach banks for loans. And again, unfortunately, this is an area of deprivation educationally. And so most of us are very passive when we borrow. We just sort of accept the terms, and everybody gets into 30-year mortgages, and we get these credit cards and auto loans, and we just pay throughout, pay every month. And frankly, a lot of that is the traditional definition of fiscal responsibility. So it's not even doing something wrong in the eyes of our society. But when you look at the math and you look at the total cost of, say, owning a home and paying it off over the course of 30 years, even with historic low interest rates, the total costs are nauseating at best.
Huge expense.
Yeah. We started to just, again, it was first introduced to me back in 2005. I shrugged it off. 6 months later, I heard about it another several times, that there were possible ways of kind of flipping the script on the banks, using their own products, turning the banks against each other. At that point, I started to kind of second guess my behavior and said, if this is real, what kind of an expert can I claim to be if I don't know about it? So I just built spreadsheets. We just started to figure it out with the arithmetic. When you look at 2 plus 2, it doesn't matter how much conceptualization somebody else is out there trying to sell. I didn't want that. I felt like somebody was trying to take advantage of me. I just wanted to see the dollars and cents. And, it was a lot of late nights. And I just remember one night at 4 a.m. laying in bed, and it was one of those eureka moments, the aha. And it kind of hit me like a ton of bricks that, what the hell, man? This is available.
So what is it? What is it? Give me an example.
Well, what it is it's a way of using various lending products to essentially apply lump sum amounts towards mortgages and other non-mortgage related debts. Frankly, it works on any debt at all. And we were able to just leapfrog down amortization and revolving compound interest scales so that these schedules could be literally chopped in little bitty pieces to where we're paying 30-year loans off in 6, 7, 8, 9, sometimes 10 years. We're taking 30-year loans, cutting them by 2/3, sometimes 3/4.
Does it mean I have to make much larger payments? In other words, you have to have a lot more cash flow in order to do that?
It works with the exact same cash flow people have starting off going in. It's just a matter of how that cash flow is managed each month. And we do it by recognizing that checking and savings accounts are garbage. Now, there are reasons why we use them. First of all, we're taught to, but nobody really knows why. I could ask a room of 1,000 people, how many people in here use checking and savings, and every hand goes up. But then when I say keep your hand in the air if you're content with the monetary value of your checking and savings account, and every hand goes down. And I find that to be ridiculous. Why in the world would every one of us agree to use these various accounts when the only person or the only factor that is benefiting from this are the banks? And we know they are.
So what should we be doing instead?
Instead, what we're doing is allowing the dollars to work for us every day. And that's where the debt weapons come in. If we can take an account and we can borrow a lump sum amount and apply it to another loan like a mortgage, it suddenly cuts 4, 5, 6 years worth of payments off of that mortgage instantly. Where then when all the money comes in that we're earning each month gets parked instead of in a checking or savings account against the debt weapon where it's temporarily sitting there, we call that paycheck parking. And everybody paycheck parks now. It's just a matter of whether or not you paycheck park in a checking or a savings account, or whether you paycheck park in your mattress, or whether you paycheck park against a debt weapon balance. The idea is when you paycheck park against a debt weapon balance, it reduces the average daily balance of that account throughout the month.
Okay, so hold on. I got to ask. So I get a paycheck twice a month from Laughlin Associates, right? My company. So if instead of putting it into my checking account, you're saying I would instead put it against the balance of my credit line.
That's right.
Or a credit card that has for some reason we've chosen this credit card to use, and then I do all of my spending off of that instead of out of the checking account?
Bingo. And we do still use checking and savings. The account initially, the check will normally go directly into checking or savings, but then we just pass it through. It's just almost a transitional account. The longer the money sits in checking and savings, the longer it's unemployed.
Gotcha. So what you do is instead of letting it sit there at zero interest, you go in and put it against something that's charging you a compounding interest and make sure there's less of a balance that they can compound on.
That's correct. So most people aren't aware, but the majority of people in this country allow their money to sit in a checking or savings account unemployed for 20 to 28 days of the month. So, it's only there, it's sitting there until they need it. And we're taught to save. We're taught for that rainy day, that we need to save for the rainy day fund. That's another 3, 6, 12 months, depending on who you're listening to, that's sitting there idle. Why would you ever have 10 grand sitting in the bank doing nothing for you indefinitely for an emergency that may never happen? If you still have available $10,000, it doesn't have to be sitting in a checking account. We function the same way as we've all been taught, meaning that there's still just as much, if not substantially more liquidity. We're just not allowing interest to work against us on a consistent basis.
Okay, so this is a huge thing, everybody. And the reason I wanted Matt to come on today was because this concept of debt weapons is such an amazing thing. And I see so many people who park money in something that's very, very liquid, and they make little to no interest on their money. And yet they think, well, it's great that I have my house payment because I get to write it off. But the idea here is you're thinking I can afford the monthly payment and I get to write off the interest. So that's a great thing, rather than saying you're completely eliminating the bank making. Basically, if you've got a $250,000 house, you're going to end up paying the bank $600,000 to $750,000 over the 30 years. So why would you want to do that just so you could have a write-off? I mean, if we start thinking about our business in an intelligent way, and if you can reduce your personal debt down. Now listen to this, guys, and I'm not an accountant. I'm not giving you accounting advice. I'm talking about business advice here. But if you can reduce your personal income needs down to a place where you kind of find equilibrium between what you need to live on and what you need to be able to show in order to finance a new, project or something. If you find that sweet spot, then you can pay yourself less money in W-2 income, and you can take more money out as distributions or as dividends at much lower interest rates. And you can also, once you've reduced down the need for lots of personal income, remember your business can pay for tons of things that you can benefit by. You can do a lot of business travel that also has pleasure travel mixed into it. You can own things, buildings and boats and airplanes and all kinds of stuff in the name of your company and have those all be pre-tax expenses rather than all this stuff getting paid for out of after-tax W-2 wages. So the idea is learn some things. In other words, learn how to use your money in the smartest possible way and using the most pre-tax money you can to benefit your life rather than tons of post-tax money. And Matt Pillmore is an expert in helping you reduce your personal debt down so that you can keep more of the money over on the business side and create a bigger pre-tax life. So all this is available. People want to know how the rich get richer and why the poor are always poor. And I'll tell you, it's because the rich people have people like Matt Pillmore who are guiding and directing them. So they're using the banks in the most intelligent way. Of course, the richest people are the ones that own the banks. So and they count on you and I just drifting along, as Matt described. This is just how you're fiscally responsible. This is how you get things financed. And like sheep, we just do what they want us to do, and it costs you a fortune. And so this podcast, the goal is to arm you with knowledge and introductions to people where you can do better than you were able to do before you heard the podcast. So with that, I'm going to ask you one more question. We're going a little long, but I want to ask you one more question about operationally something that I know you've done in your business, Matt, that I just want you to give us a quick synopsis of before we go to a break. So tell me about, as you grew, and you said you were traveling and speaking, and I know you do a lot of speaking. Tell me about how you been able to not have to be chief cook and bottle washer. Like, have you done anything creative that's amplified your ability to reach your market? And how have you delegated responsibilities out so that you're not the main, most important employee in the day-to-day activities of VIP financial education?
Okay, so I hope the answer is not too long. I just want to point one thing out just to kind of start this response. First of all, I've never considered myself a very smart guy. I struggled in school. I've never been a very book smart person. If anything, my strengths have been more in the street smart side of things. Entrepreneurially, I have certain instincts that work out. But, I'm kind of dumb. And, what's funny is I listen to people like Gary Vaynerchuk, who talks about, listen, there are two main ingredients to success. It's skill and hard work. And I believe I feel very strongly like he does in that there's only one of those two things that I could control. I could only control the hard work part of it. The skill comes with hard work more organically, but at the end of the day, it's not going to produce a higher quantity of brain cells. So I just knew that if I worked hard and put in tons and tons of hours, that we would get somewhere. And we did. And I worked my butt off. I was spending 80 hours to 120 hours a week. There were times where we'd go to bed at 3 and wake up at 6, and we were just grinding. At least 3 or 4 days of the month, we would just pull all-nighters. It was the best time to work without being interrupted. Now, I have to also admit that I don't like that philosophy. I can sit and study Gary's content day in and day out, which I love. I'm an avid student of people like Grant Cardone and Gary who constantly talk about hard work. And that's not the lifestyle I want. I don't want to work constantly. I don't see myself at 90 putting in 80 hours a week still, as he, I think, will. And so I want to try and appeal to people who are listening that also feel a deep desire for lifestyle design. People that want to travel, people that would rather commit their time giving back to the community and not spend all of their time working. For me, that required systems, and that required automation, and that required delegation, and all these things you're asking about now. If I don't want to be in the office putting in 80 to 120 hours, I've got to figure out a way that I can scale and still reach the people that I need to and still be able to help them when they need it. And ultimately, without systems and processes, that's impossible. It sounds cliche. Everybody talks about systems and processes. For me, it's about how do I get optimal efficiency where it's perpetually beneficial. I don't spend a lot of time on things like social media such as Facebook. I find that Facebook is a very important platform to optimize, so I'm going to find somebody that can do that for me. But where I spend my time is things like YouTube. You and I have had many conversations about some of the success we've had on YouTube. I'm here to tell you I'm on pace this year to earn $1 million on YouTube, and last year we earned about half that. We've now already made over $1 million over the last 5 years off of YouTube. And one thing I've loved about it is the idea that I can do something like this, record something really meaningful with someone like you, Aaron, and then post it, and it's there forever. And it's there working forever. And people are coming in and looking for content like this. So
much easier than being on the road all the time.
That's right. And going out and doing a presentation where I reach 150, tomorrow there will be about 4,500 people. That's a lot of folks. But you know that I'm now getting something like 25,000 views a month on our collective videos on YouTube. I couldn't come anywhere near reaching that many people each month in person. So I like that element of business, is searching for the platforms that work for your marketplace, where people are looking for what you provide, and you can create it once. You can kind of have that set it and forget it type of mentality. And then as I just go out and build new content every week, all that does is just drives more and more traffic for it. So, I think in business, it all boils down to how much interest can you get in what you're doing. It all boils down to traffic, and traffic, you've got to find people that want what you have. So find a way to optimize that and automate it. And that to me has been the single most valuable area of concentration for us to scale and to just kind of create efficiency and a lifestyle that we want.
It's all about scale, scale, scale. Have a way to measure, have a system. I love that you can say, I can get in front of X number of people tomorrow when I'm speaking, but I'll be in front of 25,000 people during the month online when I'm sleeping, when I'm skiing, when I'm with my friends, or whatever you're doing with family. That's always working for you guys. Scale, scale, scale. We've heard it over and over again in these interviews. How can you make sure that you've got things working for you even when you're sleeping? And the way you do it is to not just be on a hamster wheel. It's creating methodology, creating great content. I know you've created software. You're creating ways of scaling, leveraging, magnifying Matt Pillmore so that people are getting the exact part of your knowledge that they need so they can grow. We're going to go through a few things. I call this golden keys because, we're the Unshackled Owner podcast. And how do we unlock those locks? What are the golden keys that snap open the lock? And I just want to get a few quick things from you that we can pass on to our listeners. So the first one is, in your world, if somebody wants to learn more about your world or what really drives Matt Pillmore, what's the one book that you would really recommend that they get right away and read that book now?
That's easy. And I'm sure a lot of your listeners have already read it. Rich Dad, Poor Dad, by far the most influential book in my lifetime. Taught me all about the power of leverage, the acronym OPM, other people's money. It suddenly made sense. How do I borrow and convert that into an income stream that exceeds the cost of the money I'm borrowing? Here's the problem. Half the story is missing. And the half that's missing is, what do you do with all that dang debt after you get it? And if you're not savvy to handle that debt the way we teach, it can get you into trouble if there's economic fluctuation, which is inevitable. So if the economy takes a downturn, this is why we see people lose their assets, because they're just overexposed. And it's the debt that causes bankruptcies. It's the debt that causes foreclosures. So don't just stop after reading that book and say, wow, that was really great. Let's go out and make a fortune. You have to take it and continue it by at least just visiting our YouTube channel, or contact Laughlin and Aaron and just say, hey, how do I get access to some of your classes? All of our education is free. So just kind of take it that next step to the 202 version in order to really understand how leverage can benefit. But leverage, you talk about it from a scale standpoint. You can't scale without leveraging. Leverage is the secret ingredient to wealth creation, without a doubt.
Okay, good. Rich Dad, Poor Dad is the book. But remember, just because you read a book, that's just one person's story, and that's a parable written by Kiyosaki, but also really written by my dear friend Sharon Lechter. And that's part of the story. Don't build your whole life on any one book. Keep learning. But Rich Dad, Poor Dad, great book. I love it too. It's sitting right here behind my desk. What's your favorite quote?
My favorite quote currently was reminded by the recent release of The Big Short.
Oh, yeah.
Which was a Mark Twain quote. It ain't what you don't know that gets you into trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so. And I think that's a genius quote. That was my whole 20s right there.
One of the questions I always ask here is, if you could go back, what would it be? But you already told us if you could go back, you'd be more humble and you would have not ignored opportunity. But it goes right back to your quote. We think we know the answer. And most of the time, that answer has come to us sort of subjectively. And you got to keep asking questions, guys. Your wealth will be determined by the quality of your questions. All right, so as we head out of here, as we close up for the day, Matthew Pillmore, tell me, do you have any parting counsel, something you really want these people who are trying to figure out, how do I become a successful, unshackled owner? What can we teach them? And then how can they reach out to you? How can they connect to you? If you have anything that you'd like them to have, this is your time to do it.
Well, in light of what I do, I think the question I want all the listeners to ask themselves is, do you really think the banks are building their rules to benefit you? And I believe everybody knows the answer to that question. If you do, it's worth your time to explore your options. And we're happy to help contribute with that. Like I said, we're not here to solicit, so all of our education is free. We do have a back-end coaching relationship that is right for some people, but a much smaller percentage than we disqualify. So don't ever come in worrying about being sold to. We just want to get you off on the right foot. And the way that you can really plug in is to check us out on YouTube under our channel, which is VIP Financial Ed. And then from there, go ahead and take advantage of a free coaching session, courtesy Aaron and the Unshackled owner, along with Laughlin Associates. This is something that we provide for them as a gift to you. You can schedule that under freecoachingsession.com. That's freecoachingsession.com.
You own freecoachingsession.com? You own that URL?
You know, I own a couple hundred URLs. I don't know how he gets some.
Oh my gosh. That is a great freecoachingsession.com. Okay, go ahead. Keep going, brother. That's
From there,
amazing.
just go ahead and inside your scheduled appointment, if you could just put in there that you heard about us either on this podcast, just put Aaron Young's name in there, or Laughlin, however you choose. Just let us know that you found out about it from this podcast, and we'll be happy to make sure you get a full free 1 hour call, and we'll set you off on the right path. You know, we send you a free cash flow cruncher spreadsheet, which is one of the more comprehensive financial documents that includes a number of various formulas to help you in this process of managing your cash flow and just quite frankly, banking and borrowing a far better way. It's much, much faster. It's much, much less expensive, and it's much, much safer than the traditional approach to banking.
All right. Well, Matt, I'm so grateful you came on today. I always love talking to you. You know, one of the things we try to do on this program is never talk down to our listeners. So if you heard things today and you're kind of going, okay, I think I get it, but I'm not 100% sure, that's on purpose. We want to make sure that you're getting high quality education and information. But if you want to find out more, how do you eliminate that personal debt? How do you turn the bank's own products against them to more quickly eliminate personal debt? How do you do it? Go check it out. These guys have fantastic stuff on YouTube. VIP Financial Ed is the channel. And then if you want to, go ahead and get a free coaching session.
If you do have any trouble, I'm just checking that calendar. If there's any trouble with that, you can always try the freecoachingcalendar.com website as well, free coaching calendar as well. So try that website if there's any complications on free coaching session.
Good. And we'll put that in the show notes. And so, Matthew, thanks for being here. Folks, I need to say one more thing. I am a client. When I learned about this, I decided I want to learn all this stuff. I want to put this stuff to work for me. And you know why? Because I met somebody who knew a lot more about it than I did. So humble yourself and learn some cool things. And that's how you get rich. Okay, if you want to help the world, get yourself out of debt, have tons of abundance, and be able to start sharing that with the world. So, Matt, thanks for being here, guys. This is the end of the episode. I hope that you like this, share this, tell your friends, invite them here. Let's make sure we spread this information all over the world to people that really need it as we build our businesses so that you too can become an unshackled owner. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Thank you.